Action.
Hi, my name is Wyatt Moscoso, and I'm the team lead for Concussive Forces in Competitive Sports. We're a research project here under Dr. David Rankensmeyer and Dr. James Hicks. I'd like to take a moment to just introduce the team, and I think I want to take you guys on a little journey of what happened this quarter. It should gear you towards your own design projects as a junior, and hopefully with people as a senior, because we want to tell you really the stumbling blocks that happened for us. So first thing here, clearly define the responsibilities for each member of the team. You want to make sure everybody knows what they're doing at every point, because when you don't know what you're doing, you tend to just spin your wheels a bit, stuff doesn't get done. When you really know what you're doing, you'll get work done, and that's one big thing for a design project. So, as I said, I'm team lead and I did data acquisition. Tyler Jacobs, he used ball requirements and forces data. Jordan Schmitz is our equipment setup, and Sherilyn Bumantai is our documentation expert. So, let's start it off with Jordan.
Okay, so we're going to kind of run you through the project and what we did over the course of the year. So we're going to give you a brief introduction, some backgrounds to concussions, our experimental methodology, and then we're going to give you some of the results that we obtained. Okay, so our timeline. This was our general timeline for the entire year, and we stuck to it pretty well, which we're proud of. So that's one of the lessons that we'd like to pass on is set a realistic timeline and know your end goal. So our end goal was always making this publication and getting some results here to put together, which we're in the process of doing. And we kind of did have to move our testing back towards the beginning, but timelines will adapt and they'll fit your needs and you'll change things around, but it's always important to be realistic and not have these goals that you don't think you can actually achieve. Okay, so a bit of background into our topic, concussions. You know a lot about concussions in contact-heavy sports like football, but we wanted to look at some sports that there isn't very much research out there for. We chose water polo and soccer, which you might not think of having concussions, but actually there are a lot of head-related injuries occurring, about 24,000 cases of soccer head injury, 28,000 cases of water sport injury in 2009, and they both feature unique ball interactions, so that's why you're seeing concussions in these sports. So we do see about 3.8 million concussions a year. That's in America. That's the average reported number, and about 20% of those are sport-related. So it's a significant amount. And in fact, for women in soccer, that's the most dangerous sport when it comes to head injuries. So soccer is definitely a big one in women sports. So, and as I said, a lot of research in football and things like that, but not very much in water polo and soccer. And one of the main incentives was the fact that there isn't much research. Like I said, in fact, there's so little research in the sport of water polo that padded headgear is currently banned due to the lack of scientific evidence supporting the notion that it will help prevent a concussion. So that was a big incentive, which I think is an important part of any research project, is to have incentive and to have a purpose for doing this. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Sherry, who's going to talk to you about EMSSI.
Thank you, Jordan. So as he said earlier, there is very little research being done in these sports. Fortunately, there's a program on campus called the Exercise Medicine and Sports Science Initiative that does that exact kind of research. So it's a multidisciplinary program that combines different schools, such as the School of Engineering, the School of Biological Sciences, does these various projects to look at the real mechanics behind body movements when playing sports. And so our project is under this program along with Dr. James Hicks.
So our primary project goals were to determine whether ball inflation pressure actually had a direct correlation to the force of impact on the head and traumatic brain injuries. Auxiliary project goals for our year was to compare the data collected to that of a G-force tracker, which is actually being used by Dr. Blumenfield and studying it with the girls' soccer team. They would wear these little headbands during practice and get back acceleration data in their head. We'd also compare our data to the acceleration felt by the head to that of a padded headgear that's currently in the market made by Cap 7. And then I'm going to actually have White explain the budget to you.
Cool, thanks, Phil. The budget for our project, it started off, and this is actually another thing to learn from for this project, is it started off as $3,000, pretty hefty amount for our ATD, which is the main part of our testing. But that included, it was outfitted with 3 angular rate sensors, 3 piezo-resistive linear sensors, our accelerometers, basically for acquiring the data when the accelerometer and anthropomorphic testing dummy gets hit. But that quickly compounded because we realized once we got the ATD that the accelerometers weren't properly sized, they weren't noise reduced or voltage amplified or anything. They were just straight up accelerometers that were made for crash testing, but it wasn't for like a water polo hit, some type of hit you get on the head in sports out of the course of a normal sport. So we ended up having to get new accelerometers once we got this. So you kind of have these hidden costs that you really can't prepare for until the actual event occurs. And you realize, oh, I need to buy this, I need to buy this. There are all these peripheral things that you really need to be ready for. So that's one thing, is make sure you over budget rather than under budget, because you can come into surprises. So another lesson learned is looking for company searches, because the company that we rented our ATD from, Humanetics, they were very nice to us, and they actually let us extend the lease for a couple more weeks than what we were supposed to have it for, with no extra charge. But it cost $3,500. In the course of us going through this project, contacting more people, turns out there was another manufacturer, very low-key manufacturer that I didn't see on the internet, but they're at Carco, and they sell these or rent these accelerometers for 1/3 of the cost that Humanetics sells them for. So it's roughly $1,200, $1,300, and they even had a possibility of renting it for free to a school that's going to be doing research for it. So these kind of things, you really want to look as far and wide as possible to try and find these deals. The places that I looked, apparently I did not find these people, but should have dug deeper or something. So that's a definite thing to look for when you're in these situations. And well, lesson 4, I'll let
not pretend that nothing is going wrong, because you will run into errors and you will run into roadblocks, and it's all about the way that you respond to those things that determines how your project is going. I'm going to turn back over to Wyatt, who's going to tell you about the dummy a little bit.
Thanks, Joe. This is our guy right there. We actually only use the head and neck of this dummy. It's a hybrid 50th male, 50th percentile, so it's completely average. It replicates the average male body. It has excellent biofidelity, and so it mirrors what the damping of our head and neck and whatever coefficients of friction on it. And it also has very good moment, rotation, and flexion extension response. So these are all kinds of things we want if we're hitting a ball onto a crash test dummy. We want it to act just like our head would, and that's really what this does. It also has very high instrumentation capability, so it has the ability to be outfitted with many accelerometers so you can track what's going on inside the head when it gets hit. And so I want to turn it over to Tyler, who will tell you about the experimental procedure.
Thank you, Wyatt. So every time that we went out to the soccer field, we would actually have to calibrate our equipment. So we would set up, I know it's hard to see on this picture, but our ball launcher with our radar gun set right behind it. And then we'd have our ATD head connected to our computer and data acquisition system. So we'd actually use a mallet to make sure, and hit it in the head to make sure that we were actually getting signals back through the DAS and make sure that it was working properly. We would keep our velocity of the ball launcher as constant as possible throughout every single run. And we were always checking our ball inflation pressures to make sure that they weren't deflating as we went on through the experiment. So some of the experimental details, as Wyatt mentioned, we were measuring in the X, Y, and Z linear and X, Y, and Z rotational axes. We had the ball pressures on average for water polo was 13 to 14, so we went 1 above and below, and then 2 above and below that to have a wide range of ball pressures that we were testing. Soccer, the average is 8 psi, so again we went 1 in each direction and then 2 past that. The average water polo velocity is between, it was about 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. So we went down to 35 up to 55. For soccer, it was about 40, we went 35 and 45 at a range of 5 mile per hour increments. This is a video that we can actually show of one of the hits. And when we saw how the ball hit the head and went directly up, that we knew was a direct impact to the front of the skull. If it would ever bounce back at us, which it happened a lot, so we got nailed a couple times by like 50 mile an hour balls. And we knew that would be too much of a frontal impact, that it wasn't actually hitting where we needed to on the padded headgear, and we'd actually throw that run out and have to redo it. So as we said, be prepared for curveballs. I'm not sure literally. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it again, but one of the reasons we couldn't do padded headgear for soccer was our last day of the rental of the ATV head, our ball launcher broke. So it was just, we were out there ready to go, started doing runs, and it just stopped. So that's again a real world industry problem that you'll face in the future. Your equipment breaks, and unfortunately we had to send back the head without being able to get the soccer data in the end. And Wyatt will talk about the results that we got.
Thanks, Tyler. This is a soccer head impact acceleration method. If we hold velocity constant and we look at the data that we got from our trials, this is just a linear trend, it seems, because we've got these points plotted and you get a nice increase in impact acceleration on the y-axis as PSI, our ball pressure, increases. So that's kind of what we expected. As we increase the pressure, it's going to have this trend, and so we can reduce the pressure, reduce the chance of having a concussion occur by lowering the ball pressure. That's for soccer, and that's our three graphs for soccer. And then for water polo, this is, again, without headgear, and this is at 40 miles an hour, and you can see kind of the same thing. And when we graph it, it looks something like that. So this is the one we just saw, but then this is with the headgear on. So you can see there's a linear trend for both of them upward. This one kind of dips a bit, but with this one, there's a huge decrease right here. This is across the board about 20% decrease in impact in the head peak acceleration as you go from with headgear to without headgear. So it's actually very good to have headgear in these sports, and the NCAA is banning it, but this is actual data that's disproving the ban. So this is kind of where we're going with that. And you can see this is kind of our, the best stuff. This is everything that we have. So all 5 speeds, 35 through 55 for water polo without headgear, and all 5 with headgear. And you can see every single one of them decreases by this large margin. And so about 20 to 18% decrease across the board. And I would like to turn it back over to Sherry to talk about our next steps.
So we've done a lot of research and data acquisition. We're at a point now where we're condensing all those findings and writing a cumulative thesis report about that to send it off for publication, to send it off to like the NCAA and try to get those policies overturned and whatnot. And then we also have the spring design review then. So I guess another lesson learned we've done is make the best of all the relationships you make during the project. So you are with this group of people for a year, pretty much. I actually was added last minute, and these guys graciously let me in, so I'm very fortunate for that. But yeah, just make the best relationships. We've had a lot of fun. The concussion boys and market average findings.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, you get a lot of relationships through just working with the companies here. So Mike Gratov from Humanetics, I actually worked pretty closely with him, had some legal disputes with him that was another unforeseen plan. Like, I had no idea about legal stuff, and it turns out that was a big stumbling block. We almost weren't able to rent the ATD and start the project at all because of the legal misstep that I made that I was like, I had no idea. So that's one thing you have to learn about when you're renting from big companies. We met people on campus who helped us, like facilities managers. We met the soccer team, the water polo team, all these people, great people. I'm so happy that we've met them, and in the future we can definitely use them to, help our project along more. And so making these relationships, staying in contact with them, being polite and nice to everybody that you meet, and not blowing them off, is really paramount for these types of projects and for just getting along in industry in general. So don't step on little people on the way up because you don't know if they're going to be your boss later or whatever. So that's pretty much what I have to say on that.
Thank you.